Greetings and welcome to Jefficho Films. Today we're going to talk about an educational movie directed by Spiro Rosatos, who's, second unit director on Captain America Civil War, Fast and Furious 5, 6, and 7. He does stunt directing, which is, for all the action scenes. But in 1994, he directed The Class of 1999, 2, The Substitute. So let's review that. This movie starts out in Bend, Oregon, where a substitute teacher walks by a classroom and gets pulled inside and presumably killed and replaced by Sasha Mitchell, who's playing John Bolen. He comes across some kids that are spray painting the halls and running around, and he asks them what they're doing. They lie, and then he beats the shit out of them. Next we meet Gordon Ash, who's a special investigator who's basically recapping the first movie about a Professor Bob Forrest who took military androids and turned them into special teachers who'd go into harsh environments with juvenile delinquents and they would teach them and enforce discipline. Little did they know the extremes they would go to. They basically killed kids, and he thinks that they were all destroyed and disassembled, except maybe one. John's already in the principal's office and he wants to suspend them for attacking the kids, but John offers another solution.
So I'm gonna need more information on you.
Outside, the kids are waiting in the car for John to get some retribution, but he goes out there and basically locks them in the car and drops a grenade in there, and class is dismissed.
Now class is dismissed, gentlemen.
Next we're in California, a prison school where Jenna has a dead cat thrown at her windshield. She gets out and is accosted by Sanders, her stalker, but Emmett shows up and helps her out. And then the more important part, John shows up at the school. John steps into a classroom and it's chaos, and he finally gets order, but there's this one student who's just a little shit, Tillard, and he drops his book and John just hears like a bomb dropping, so he drops to the floor and you can hear the gunfire and that he's been in like some serious shit in the past. He gets up and he sends the kid to the principal's office, but Tillard doesn't go to the principal's office and John follows him. And Tillard's up on the roof now, and John puts a rope around his neck and throws him off. John gets questioned by the sheriff, who's really the only cop in this town, and then he notices John's special forces tattoo on his wrist. And then John goes inside and has lunch. He has a lot of food. Jenna joins him, and he supports her for testifying against Sanders. And then she asks him a lot of questions, so he takes all his food and he gets up and he leaves. He's an awkward human being. Jenna and Emmett hang out that night, but they've been dating for a while, you can tell. We get more of Ash's diary and flashbacks to the first movie, and the next day Jenna goes for a run in some sexy tight leggings. She gets chased by one of the students and then ambushed by 3 other students, and they tell her that she better forget what she saw last week, and then they leave. But the one student remains, Ice, and he's up to some dirty shit, but then John shows up and scares him off, and they report it to the police. Jenna asks John to take her home, but John's like, you gotta go to school and show strength. She also finds his book of poems of war and borrows it. John goes to the Army Museum, which is actually run by Emmett, but he doesn't get the tour. It must be too late in the day. And we get introduced to this really cool body armor that you can just wear over like a jumpsuit. It's late at night, and Jenna can't get into her truck because the locks have been messed with by those assholes. It's actually Ice, and he's tormenting her. But Emmett shows up and scares him off, and then he takes her to the police so she can do another statement. That's exciting. John shows up and starts chasing Ice around, and then he puts him on permanent detention.
You've been more than a bit of a discipline problem. Now we're gonna have to do something about your attitude. In fact, you're on permanent detention.
Gemma finds a piece of paper in the sheriff's garbage about his possible serial killer, but he says he threw it away because he's not too worried about that being around here. Emmett decides to get drunk because Jenna was pissed at him, and then he goes driving with his guns, and he chases down Sanders and threatens him with the gun. Said, you don't leave her alone, I'm gonna shoot you. I think a semi-automatic was overkill. Jenna then goes home and reads that book, Poems of War, in her underwear, and John stands outside her window and watches her. Maybe he just really doesn't want to lose that book.
I will stride the path in death's shoes, no sorrows or regret. Death is my mission. My mission is met.
Emmett and the sheriff head down to the bunker because they want to lock up all the weapons he has, and he has a lot of weapons and detonators and dynamite and all that shit in that bunker. They want to lock all that up before the students show up and have their big paintball war thing. When class is over that day, Jenna asks John about the dedication in the book, but he says he got it from a used bookstore. And then a student recognizes him, a student that came from another school. John follows him, and John takes care of him. The sheriff finds a burnt body, I'm assuming Ice's, in the trash, and so he thinks Emmett did it, so he arrests him. And Jenna's just working late, and then John shows up, and she's not even startled by him, which is a constant. Like, she just doesn't jump when he's there. But if it's a student, she'll jump. I guess he's got a calming presence for a guy that stands outside your window and watches you in your underwear read a book. She talks to John about Emmett and how, like, she doesn't think he did it, but that he's completely capable of doing it. And then we see Ash shows up at the jail asking about Emmett, and then he does a little trick to find out if he's a robot.
GD Ash.
Hey!
What's going on? Had to be sure. What the hell are you talking about?
That night, John loads up on weapons, and Emmett's released because his alibi checked out, and he's pissed at the sheriff, so he's just walking home. And Sanders and his goons drive by saying, "Party at Jenna's," so Emmett just runs after there, and Jenna's just standing there. John then pops out of the woods at Emma's place like that's normal behavior, and she's still not startled by it. He asks her about getting the book back, and he has this knife behind him, and he's just slowly pulling it out. Like if she figured out that he's the one that killed the student, he was gonna kill her. And then they get into a big talk, and she opens up to him. But he's still pulling the knife out, like he's still gonna kill her.
Let's not talk about it, okay?
Doing your duty is never easy. Nobody understands that more than I do.
Sanders and his crew just unload, and he tosses her inside the house and takes a ton of shots to the back, but it doesn't faze him. He manages to go off fine.
Last and final warning. Don't testify, bitch. Fuck.
But later she's just like, "I'm not going to testify anymore." And Sanders still plans to kill her the next day at the war games. I guess nothing gets your heart going like getting shot at, so that night Emmett and Jenna, they make love. And even though she only takes off half her clothes, and that's not how sex works, it seems like they're having a good time. And John can tell you that, because he's outside watching it, and sweating profusely. And then he goes to Emmett's museum, and he shoots it up. He just destroys the place. He also finds the bunker and loads up on weapons there too. Emmett finds his place is just destroyed and blames Sanders. He also finds it weird that John disappeared, but the war games begins, and Sanders' team has infiltrated both teams. The sheriff gets a call that the federal investigator Ash was actually thrown out, and that he's considered crazy. John actually sets a bomb up and sets a counter off, and then Ash gets to drop on him with some armor-piercing rounds.
The next time I ask, it'll be with his gun. I'll put the goddamn weapon down.
They actually have a good talk, and Ash points out that Professor Forrest was brilliant, and he actually doesn't want to decommission him. He wants to make more of them, and it seems like John's totally on board. Then he pulls out his knife and stabs him.
You don't want to decommission me?
The only remaining battle droid of the A-77 series? Absolutely not. I'm gonna copy you.
Next we get to see a bunch of John's tricks. A kid falling into a booby trap, and the old water bottle flask trick. Next he puts on a ref's uniform and disqualifies some kids for not following the rules, and he gets them to walk towards him, and they fall into a pit, where he drops a grenade. And then he stands there, because he loves standing in front of explosions. Some students tell Jenna that there's another student in trouble, and they lure her into Sanders' group, which is all according to Sanders' plan. And then John shows up and starts killing them all. And then he starts to follow Jenna, and he's gonna kill her too. I guess he's gotta take out all the witnesses. And he goes to stab her, but he purposely misses. I guess he's trying to fight his programming or something. The sheriff shows up and he shotguns John. John falls into a hole. The sheriff goes looking into that hole and he gets killed. Sanders shows up, but Jenna's got a shotgun this time, but she can't shoot him. But But Emmett does. He shows up and he saves her.
You first. You first.
And then John shoots Emmett, and he goes to shoot him some more, but then Jenna jumps in front of him and takes some of the shots. But it's okay, she's wearing that body armor. John reveals that he's an A77 battle droid to Jenna, and he explains his mission, but he asks why he can't kill her. And then Ash shows up, and he explains that he's not a battle droid, and then he reads the dedication in the book.
To my son John, duty and discipline. It's from your father.
I am a battle droid.
Get a fucking clue.
Ash's whole reasoning that he's not an android and that he's human is because the androids were scratch-proof, and John has a little scratch on his neck. I call bullshit on that. It's still flesh on top. We even saw in the first one half the flesh was melted off. Telling me that's not an android?
You're not a droid, John! You're just a kid wearing K-33 body armor. Well, end of mission, Johnny.
He shoots John a couple times with his armor-piercing bullets and he goes down. Then he tries to make conversation with Jenna, which was a mistake.
So you're wearing Kelvin's too, huh? Damn!
John attacks and takes Ash out, and then he drags Jenna into the bunker as the whole explosive is gonna go off, but she talks some sense into him that she has a mission too, and she manages to escape, but he goes right after her. She shoots him and he goes back into the bunker and it explodes. I mean, they could have cheapened it later and been like, oh, like, look, he's over there, he survived. But I'm pretty sure he's dead. At the end, she's just talking to Emmett on the phone, and she's all like, oh, I'm going to school and this, and I'm going to do this, but I have a mission, you know, I have a purpose now. It's like she's taking over his mission, which would be interesting to see.
After what I've just been through, nothing could faze me anymore. I'm on a mission.
And that's where this movie ends. I mean, this movie really should have been called Class of 2001 because when Ash is talking about the Kennedy High incident that happened in 1999, which he says was 2 years ago, well, that would make today 2001. Sasha Mitchell, who played John, went on to do Kickboxer 2, 3, and 4, and he's still acting today. But this movie was always in the back of my head. Like, I really enjoyed the whole, like, I'm not a robot thing, but he never really accepted that. But it was really cool because there's like all these little hints to it. Like when he had the little PTSD moment in the classroom, and then when he's standing outside of her window and he's just like all sweaty and excited because he's seen a girl in her underwear. It's like these kind of little things that are just hinting that you might be more than you programming. And it was pretty interesting. I don't know, I remember it more fondly than I probably should. However, going back and watching it, I didn't really have a problem with it. It was definitely a 90s movie. Pacing was a bit odd, and it did do a lot of back and forth things like, how many reports are you going to file with the sheriff? Why don't you just save it up for a week and file 6? Because that's how many you're going to have. Sheriff doesn't do shit in this movie.
The enemy is before me, around me, and yet no fear will I have. My mission is met. Death is my mission. My mission is met.
So in the end, they took the first movie where they had android substitute teachers just killing kids for misbehaving, and they put a cool twist on it. So I've always enjoyed this movie for that. I'm sure I'm probably one of few, but if you ever want to check it out, go right ahead. I ain't stopping you. As always, thanks for watching it.